Hello crew, this is your captain speaking for an essay on adaptational pacing in anime and manga, and my personal case against the One Piece anime. One Piece is my favourite manga of all time, but when it comes to the anime, I just can't bring myself to recommend it. Friends will tell me they're thinking of getting into the series, and I say, trying not to be too much of a snob about it, try to read it if you can. And usually they don't, because my friends just aren't manga readers, and I always wonder if that's a factor in them not getting as into it as I am. And look, I'm not anti-anime in general. Most series out there, I would say either manga or anime is fine. There's no huge trade-off either way. There are a few besides One Piece that I would only put forward the manga for, and even a handful I would say I outright prefer the anime adaptation of. But the One Piece anime, I just cannot in good faith recommend it as something that I enjoy. And it's not as if I haven't tried. Though I haven't seen the anime all the way through, and I've probably seen less than 10% of it all up, in the past, once or twice a year when I hear through the fan communities that it's getting to a bit that I enjoyed in the manga, I've tried to pick it up again, and tried to make a habit of tuning in on Sundays. But every time, I could only last a few weeks before I was reminded in a big way why I can't stick with it. These days, I know the clips of the Sakuga moments will reach my feed anyway. I know how trying to sit through the full episodes will go. But what is the actual problem with the One Piece anime? We have a few minor issues that wouldn't be deal breakers on their own, and one very big, overwhelming one that we'll get to in a moment. There's the fact that the anime targets a slightly younger audience than the manga, and tones down some of its darker bits just a smidge. Mostly, this doesn't matter. There's no change to the story if Bellamere gets shot in the head or the chest. But there are a couple of scenes I think the censorship does legitimate harm to. Sanji and Zeph's relationship reads pretty different depending on if he lost his leg in the shipwreck or chose to sever it himself. It is a much bigger sacrifice that I think he makes in the manga. And of course, Whitebeard versus Sakazuki is memorable in the manga for being a shocking escalation of violence and brutality in an already tense moment, and the anime completely whiffs it. We also have the omission of cover stories and the extra lore and world building provided in the author's between chapter Q&A section, the SBS corner. These things are adjacent to the main story in most cases, but it's still a shame to lose them. There's the animation and art quality being quite janky for most of the anime's run, and when it does finally pick up, adopting a ton of bizarre and ill-fitting stylistic choices like glowing auras, laser swords, and characters suddenly deciding they can fly like it wants to be Dragon Ball. All of those things pale before the anime's god-awful and inexcusable pacing. But how bad is it? Let's run the numbers from a few different points in the series to see how far the anime has declined. One Piece Volume 1 gives the anime 4 episodes worth of content. This is 96 minutes, or just over an hour and a half of viewing time. How does that compare to reading the thing? Well, reading times are going to vary based on individual paces and the text-to-action ratio of the volume itself. But most manga readers seem to think they're putting aside 40 minutes to an hour for an average volume. I would say maybe 45 minutes, personally, but for the sake of consistency, we're going to assume every volume hits that hour-long upper limit. So, an hour to read, an hour and a half to watch. To be fair about giving the manga this highball time limit, we're also not factoring out anime openings, outros, and recaps. This is in part because the recap length changes from episode to episode, so you can't just lop a consistent number of minutes away. And this essay is about slow readers versus completely unabridged anime viewers. By volume 30, the midpoint of the pre-time skip era and the start of Skypia's climax, the anime is taking 6 episodes to fully adapt the book. This is 144 minutes, or just under 2.5 hours of viewing time. And it still takes an hour to read, same size as Volume 1. At the start of the post-time skip era, Volume 61, we're looking at 11 episodes to the volume, 264 minutes, or 4.4 hours of viewing time. And it's the same size as the last two volumes. By volume 101, the last book to be fully adapted by the anime at the time that I wrote the first draft of this script, it takes 13 full episodes, plus the first 8 minutes of the 14th one, to watch the whole thing. That is 320 minutes, or 5.3 hours. We're approaching almost a quarter of your day to get through a book that you can still read in just an hour. There's still only 200 pages. The most recent volumes are denser and more wordy than the older ones, sure, but not enough to justify this. At the time of recording, the anime has also completed volume 102. It takes a flat 13 episodes, so 8 minutes better than the previous volume. A very marginal fluctuation and a slight improvement. Okay, so that sounds pretty slow, but One Piece doesn't exist in a vacuum. To demonstrate why this current pacing is so damn hard to deal with, today we're going to try comparing manga volumes to anime episodes for a number of other series. Why volumes and not chapters? Well, Chapter 1 of One Piece is 53 pages long. Chapter 962 is just 13 pages. 17 is the current average, but that can still increase or decrease by 2 pages on any given week. And that's just for One Piece. A monthly manga, like Fullmetal Alchemist, Attack on Titan, or the more recent parts of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, might have 50 or more pages per chapter as a standard. Chapters are too inconsistent. But these chapters are typically collected into volumes in this Tankoban format. And lucky for us, Tankobans fairly consistently have around 200 pages each. There's wriggle room of about 10% in either direction of that. I think for older series there was a time where the lower end of that spectrum, around 180 pages, was more common, but lately 200 is more the standard. But no matter how the series ran originally, the Tankoban has whatever the number of chapters gets it to 200 pages. Here's weekly One Piece and monthly JoJolion side by side. One has 10 chapters, the other has 4, but the volumes are the same size. That's why we're using volumes here, to get a fair comparison across series with all kinds of original release modes. Also, some series are only published in English in omnibus formats, but they generally start out in Japan as tankobans. So, if you've only ever seen JoJo when it's this big, know that I am talking about the version that is this big, alright? I've included series that I am at least a little bit familiar with both versions of, and chosen a lot of more recent ones to get a view of how out of step One Piece manages to be with modern adaptations. I tried to use full, complete series when I could, but sometimes you have to pick a cutoff point and round to the nearest volume. I tried to avoid series with excessive filler or other non-canon content that would need factoring out as well. And I'm sticking with things that both I and the wider anime community would generally say are successful and faithful adaptations. Because I have seen defenders of the OP anime claiming that if it went too fast, the big moments wouldn't get to breathe, or they wouldn't be able to flesh things out fully, and all other kinds of nonsense. Here are the series that are not held back by that. Finally, the ratio is a simple calculation of anime episodes divided by manga volumes. Most, if not all, the series that I'm about to list will cover their source material faster in some areas and slower in others, but I'm using the average to get a broad idea of how fast they get pages on the screen overall. First up, Hunter x Hunter, comparing the manga to the 2011 anime. This covers the first 32 volumes in 148 episodes, averaging out to 4.6 episodes per volume. Slower overall than early One Piece, but leagues faster than mid to current One Piece. My Hero Academia's first 6 seasons run straight up to the end of volume 33 of the manga in 138 episodes, giving it a ratio of 4.2 episodes per volume. However, that rounds down to a 4.0 if you remove 5 filler and recap episodes. Kimetsu no Yaiba, or Demon Slayer, covers 11 volumes in its first 44 episodes, using the TV version of Mugen Train instead of the movie, and leaving out the latest season because the hour-long finale episode complicates these calculations. This is a flat 4 episodes per volume. We are right down to where One Piece started already, and the current season, aside from the finale episode, does move at a similar pace, and this series is a phenomenon. The anime adaptation absolutely elevates Kimetsu, and goes as fast as One Piece ever has. Death Note, the oldest adaptation on this list, adapts 12 volumes into a brisk 37 episodes, achieving a ratio of 3.1 episodes per volume. Quite impressive considering that it ran alongside the drawn-out, long-running Shonen Jump Big 3, and though it's thought to have rushed the second half of the story just a tad, this series is fondly remembered. The incomparable Vinland Saga has to date adapted 14 manga volumes in 48 anime episodes, or 3.4 episodes per volume. This was considered for a long time to be unadaptable, and it is, by basically every measure, a successful and beloved adaptation. Attack on Titan, up to the end of its last TV-length episode before the oversized finale, covered 32 volumes in 87 episodes, at a pace of 2.7 episodes per volume. And this thing is another cultural phenomenon that has taken off to a huge degree. Chainsaw Man's first season achieves the same 2.7 ratio by adapting 4.5 volumes in 12 episodes. Smash hit. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, my anime list top series for God knows how long, withstander of the test of time, adapts 27 manga volumes in 64 episodes, or a pace of 2.4 episodes per volume. Now, as an FMA manga diehard, I have personal nits to pick with it as an adaptation, particularly for how it glosses over so many things in the first 14 episodes. Maybe we say the anime original first episode and the mid-series recap episode even out to the time it would have taken to properly flesh out those early arcs. But my personal gripes aside, this series is a jewel of the anime and manga community, and its dominance is unquestionable. We're also now, as of FMA, at the point in this list where it would be quicker to watch a series than to read it, assuming it takes you the whole hour for every single volume. Which it probably won't, but for the sake of argument we're still pretending it will. 2.5 episodes per volume is an hour for each. Everything below that is just leading harder and harder on the gas. Speeding up another step, recent fan darling Mob Psycho 100 adapted 16 manga volumes into 37 anime episodes, or a ratio of 2.3 episodes per volume. And this is one of the ones I would say goes above and beyond its source material in almost every way. Quicker still, underrated jump gem Assassination Classroom hits a ratio of 2.2 with 21 volumes and 47 episodes. The enormous JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, parts 1 through 6, produced 190 episodes to cover 80 manga volumes. The mathematicians among you might have noticed right away that comes out to an even 2 episodes for every volume. And frankly, there are still some stretches in the middle of part 3 that feel slow. By a similar measure, the first 2 series of Kaiji adapt 26 volumes into 52 episodes. Once again, a 2-for-1. And finally, at the bottom of the list here, last year's unsung sleeper hit Summertime Rendering has had 13 volumes adapted into just 25 episodes, or 1.9 episodes per volume. While this series, I think, didn't get the mainstream success it deserved, high rankings from critics and dedicated fans on ranking sites suggest that is just because it was in Disney Plus jail, not because it moved too fast. And I really want to highlight those last 2 series, because we know that numbers alone don't measure the quality of an adaptation. And we know that an action-heavy series is going to move faster on the screen than one that's full of dialogue and exposition. But then we have Kaiji, a suspense-driven gambling story with a focus on game psychology that needs a lot of inner monologue to lay out rules and tactics and headspaces. And we have Summertime Rendering, a time loop mystery thriller with some horror vibes. It takes a lot of talking to establish its high concept stakes in a way that viewers can keep up with. Both of these manga have a lot of talking that can't easily be cut out or streamlined, and they both occupy genres that need to give the tension time to build and the big, shocking twists room to breathe. By all means, these should be the ones with the most to gain by adapting slowly and drawing the story out. But they're the fastest ones on the list, and it hasn't hurt them. Kaiji is a cult classic, and Summertime is likely to go the same way. They made all of Summertime rendering fit in 25 episodes, and you think I've got the patience to spend nearly 5.5 hours on a single volume of One Piece? And for a final outlier, I want to present Hellsing Ultimate. This was an OVA series, not bound by TV runtimes. It got 10 episodes, each roughly corresponding to one of the series' 10 manga volumes, taking as long or as short as they needed to adapt it to the screen. Episodes run from 42 minutes for the shortest one to 68 for the longest. While this does reveal something of the range possible for adaptational pace within a series, it does also come out to a breezy 8.2 hours total for the full series, to show what a production unrestrained by the TV format chooses to do with a manga's page count. This is also good news for the upcoming Netflix adaptation of One Piece, which was recently announced to have just 8 episodes for its entire East Blue season. If 8 hours is enough for 10 manga volumes for Hellsing, they should be able to squeeze in the 11 East Blue volumes of One Piece without too many issues. Now, I do also want to highlight how One Piece compares to series from its own era and before. Take Dragon Ball. Relying blindly on AnimeFillerList.com, the OG Dragon Ball has 153 episodes, minus 21 filler episodes, for a total of 132 episodes adapted from the manga, while Dragon Ball Z has 291 total, minus 38 filler, for 254, or 385 across both series, compared to 42 manga volumes for a ratio of 9.2 episodes per volume. Naruto, similarly, has 220 total episodes, minus 90 fillers for 130 canon episodes. Naruto Shippuden has 500 episodes and a whopping 203 fillers for 297 total canon episodes. That's 427 episodes across both series. Against 72 manga volumes, it's a ratio of 5.9 episodes per volume. Not nearly as slow as Dragon Ball, but we can see from the list above that it's still molasses compared to basically any well-received adaptation of the past 15 years. Bleach, the last of the original Big Three, released 366 episodes, minus 163 fillers, for 203 episodes adapting the first 54 volumes of the manga. We're not factoring in the 1,000 Blood War anime here because A, it's ongoing, and B, I don't care enough about Bleach to bother with it. Anyway, 203 episodes to 54 volumes is a ratio of 3.7, showing that, while on the higher end of the spectrum, Bleach isn't too badly paced for an adaptation, especially compared to its contemporaries, and of course when it wasn't bloated up with filler. So, looked at this way, using the anime filler list method, One Piece has 163 episodes to cover 102 volumes, minus 95 purely filler episodes, to a ratio of 9.5. Remember that that's an average. It's only going to keep climbing higher if they keep taking 12 plus episodes to cover single volumes. So, while we can say that the One Piece anime is a product of its time, we can actually see that it's significantly slower on average than de-fillerized versions of its main rivals. Its closest comparison is the series that started a decade before it. And I just can't do it. The reign of the Big Three and their billion-episode adaptations was during my formative teen years, but I just can't do it anymore. None of the things the anime gets right as an adaptation, and despite it all, it does sometimes look and sound very nice, but none of that is worth shifting through the speed that everything else moves. I know that there are reasons One Piece is still adapted the way it is, but I've seen too many modern, decently paced anime to wade through Toei's molasses. By the time you're even at Skypiea, there is a decent chance that it is the slowest adaptation you have ever sat through. And by the present day, it definitely is. As a final aside, some will recommend the fan edit One Piece as an alternative to the official series. I think One Piece is a valiant effort, but its editors are restricted by the series' slow movements and drawn-out dialogue delivery even in its canon scenes, so they can only do so much. Looking at recent material, they've slated 32 episodes to cover Acts 1 and 2 of the Wano arc. This was roughly 4.5 volumes of the manga, so an average of 7.1 episodes per volume. Still probably the slowest adaptation you've ever seen, and they let their episodes run longer than the TV-length 24 minutes. It's still just not enough for me to properly enjoy the anime. I would also consider this a counterpoint to the idea that just skipping intros and recaps makes all that much of a difference to the anime's watchability, and to the inevitable comment that I've been unfair in not factoring them out of the viewing time. One Piece cuts all of that and more, and is still by far the slowest adaptation I've seen since I left high school. The anime isn't going to change though. It makes too much money for that, and I am not arrogant enough to assume that my little video on my fledgling channel in English has any sway over the Japanese production committee, let alone enough to argue for a change to a seasonal anime. There's no call to action here, just the data on the way things are, and a personal reflection on why this adaptation isn't working for me, despite how much I love the manga. And I don't want this to read as an attack on anyone who enjoys the One Piece anime for what it is. I'm aware that it probably does anyway, but know that there is no hate in my heart for you. Normally, I'm happy to just do my own thing, pretending the manga is all that exists. I'm not the kind of fan who comes into the anime thread or tags or discussions anywhere week after week just to shit on it. But I got curious about the numbers, and running them produced results that I thought told a story and depicted the reasons some manga readers are so hard against the anime in a way that I hadn't seen done online before. I hope the numbers in this video have given you something to think about and a different perspective on the ways adaptations can cover their source material. Let me know if you have another series with an interesting episodes to volumes ratio, and what you think the ideal ratio would be if they ever go back and remake One Piece from the start. Personally, I'd love to see the Hellsing Ultimate model used more often, and barring that, something more in the 2.5 to 2.7 range. We could get back to where we are now in under 300 episodes. Look, thank you for watching if you've come this far, and make sure you do all the normal YouTube things above and below if you like what I have done here. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.